Thank you everyone for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Ben Zong. I'm the Senior Program Consultant with the California Fuel Cell Partnership. Calling in from our Southern California office is Joe Gagliano. He's the Infrastructure Development Manager for the Fuel Cell Partnership. A couple of administrative items before we get started. First, everyone is muted. However, you can ask questions using the GoToWebinar tool. At the end of the presentation, we will have a Q&A session. The webinar recording as well as the presentation will be posted on our website at the end of next week. And so with that, I'm going to hand over to Joe to start the presentation.
All right, thank you, Ben. Next slide, please. Hi, so right now, California has over 60 funded hydrogen fueling stations with the addition of the latest 16 stations from the last funding round of GFO's 15605. We now have 31 retail stations open to the public. The latest stations to open include Fremont, San Ramon, and Torrance. And then for forecast for the estimate of how many stations will be open by the end of the year, we're forecasting about a total of about 33 to be open to the public by the end of 2017. And currently, we have over 2,700 fuel cell vehicles on the road in California. Next slide, please. The partnership has developed a web page on our website called By the Numbers, where we are currently tracking the number of fuel cell cars sold and leased in the state, fuel cell buses, how many hydrogen stations are open, as well as fuel cell buses and shuttles and stations that are in development. And here you see we have, in addition to the numbers that I just mentioned, we have 20 fuel cell buses operating currently in California. That those are spread across a number of different agencies, from AC Transit to Sunline Transit and OCTA here in Orange County. And also we have a number of fuel cell shuttle buses, fuel cell shuttles, I should say, in development. Two are slated for Cal State LA and also for Sunline Transit. Next slide, please. So we have, as I mentioned, we had recently 3 new openings in terms of retail hydrogen stations, the San Ramon station, the Fremont and Torrance stations. San Ramon and Torrance both had opening ceremony celebrations very recently. Next up, we anticipate having the Ontario station and also the Woodside station are close to opening. We are forecasting those to be open by the end of the year at the present time. Mountain View, LAX, Thousand Oaks, and Palo Alto stations, those are forecast to be opening in early 2018. Next slide, please. And here you see we've updated our station maps. These are downloadable maps that you can get from our website. These 2 pages that includes 1 page of Northern California stations and 1 of Southern California stations. And you can see that in the yellow, the stations marked by the yellow bullets are retail and in development. And those now include the 16 stations that were most recently funded. And those include the Shell stations in Northern California, the Air Liquide station in the Central Valley, and then the First Element stations throughout the state. Next slide, please. To talk about the website, the partnership's interactive station map in SOSS, I'll turn it over to Ben Zong.
All right, thanks, Joe. So I just wanted to touch on 2 tools that the California Fuel Cell Partnership has available for current customers, potential customers, as well as any new customers. And so these tools, I've talked about them in previous webinars, but yeah, I've been contacted by potential new customers to share this information again. And so apologize if you've already seen this, but we did make a couple of changes to our station operational status system that I will be touching on at the end for anyone who has seen this information before. Our first tool is our station map on our website, and that can be found at the URL cafcp.org/station map. So this site is a location-based tool, and what that means basically is that you can change this map based on your location. You can put in your zip code. For me, I'm in the Sacramento area, and so I'm typically going to zoom in. Obviously, this is a map view, but you can also see the list of stations by clicking on List Stations. And depending on where this map is focused on, this list will change based on what's viewable on the screen. For stakeholders who also want to be able to download the list, we have a button on the side here where you can click on this and download a PDF version of all of the stations. This list is taken directly from the GoBiz smart sheet for stakeholders, and so it is synced. Also with this site, you can filter by the different development statuses, and so the green stations are stations that are already open and operational. These are retail stations, meaning any customer can pull up to those stations and fill up at. The yellow stations are in development stations. So if you're a potential new customer and you want to find a station near you, or for me, I drive to the Bay Area quite often, so I might look at this Bay Area list here, and you can click on the list here, click on any of the station to get more information about, for instance, Mountain View here. If I click on it, it'll tell me when it's expected to open. Also, we will typically have a little bit more information at the bottom here, describing what the current phase is and where it is in the development process. For stations that are already open, such as the West Sacramento station here, when you click on that, it will provide for you at the top here a station, the real-time operational status, so whether it's online or offline. If there's any notices, we'll also include at the top of this box here as well. And then we also provide a customer service number if you want to get in contact with them, or if you want to visit their site, there's a link to that as well. Recently, there's been requests to see what the renewable content is at that station, and we've included that into the site as well. Okay. A couple of other resources on our website. So our downloads page, this is where you can also download the list of stations, and as well as those maps that Joe talked about earlier as well, the Northern and Southern California map. And so primarily for stakeholders, if you want to put that in a presentation, that's where you can find that information. Also on our resources menu, you can find our by the numbers page. And so on this page, as Joe indicated earlier, this is showing you all of the fuel cell vehicles sold in California, as well as buses in operation. This page, where we're taking data from hybridcars.com as well as carsellsbase.com, they update their data on a monthly basis. And so as soon as they update their information, we'll make the update on our website as well. So usually that first week of the month. The second tool I want to talk about is our station operational status system. And so if you're a current driver of a fuel cell vehicle and you haven't gone to the site yet, this site lets you know when a station is operating and when it's offline. It's listed in alphabetical order by default. There's a green button, or you get green circles if the station is online, yellow triangles if it's limited, and then red squares if it is offline. There's also a question mark for unknown. So a green circle, if it's online, that typically means that it's fully operational. If you show up there, you'll get 95% or more of a fill. A yellow limited means that you're not going to get a full fill, and that typically happens if there are multiple vehicles filling up back to back. So if you have 5 cars filling up back to back, that status is going to change into that yellow limited. And then an offline means that it's not operational. So that can be caused by the point of sale system going offline, or a number of other issues as well. And in the unknown, the question mark, if you see that means we've lost connectivity to that station. So that typically is caused by internet outage, or there's a power outage to the computer. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's not operating. So I would encourage you to call the customer service number if you see that question mark. And we also have this information icon. And so if a station is going to be put in maintenance, so let's say True Zero calls us and tells us that the Saratoga station is going to be having maintenance next week, we will add that to that information icon. These stations here, they have limited hours. So for instance, the Woodland Hill station here, when you click on it, So this notice shows up at the top. It'll tell you what the hours are. Again, if it's going to be in maintenance, that maintenance notification is going to be added to this note here. And on top of that, we'll typically let you know when that station is expected to come back online. And again, this information is exactly the same information that's shown on our station map. We have the online status, when it was last updated, as well as the customer service number that you can reach the station developers at. So this site, it's not an app, so you're not going to be able to download it on the iOS store or through a Droid store. It is a mobile-friendly site, so any phone, you can access this on your PC, on your tablet, by going to the URL as in mobile, m.cafcp.org. There's a couple of key features with this site. You can sign up to be notified by either text message or by email when a station changes status, and that's really where the new changes is we changed the interface a little bit on that part. There's originally when you sign up for an account, you were sent an email to authenticate, and then once you authenticated, it would let you log into the site. Now it automatically lets you log in. So once you sign up for an account, you can automatically start signing up for notifications. We've also have changed the just the interface itself for signing up for notifications. And so at the top of the page, as well as at the bottom, you can click on My Account. And that'll take you to this page here, which allows you to do a custom sort of the list. And so again, by default, they're all listed in alphabetical order, but you can sort it. So for instance, for me, I'm in the Sacramento area, and so I would want to list the West Sacramento station first, and so you can drag it at the top. And then again, when you log into the site, the West Sacramento station is going to pop up first for me. The main change we made is with the station notification page sign up process. And so on here, if you want to get text messages when a station changes status, you would put in your cell phone as well as who your provider is. And then from there, we have a legend explaining what the different icons represent. So if you want to receive text messages, you would choose the phone icon, email messages, the email icon here, and then you're able to choose the different statuses that we have available as well as the pressures. And so if you're only interested in when a station goes online and offline, you can just choose these two icons here. And then if you're only interested in H70, you can choose that H70 box there. And then for the users who want everything, you can click on the all, and that will click on all of the boxes there. Okay. By default, most customers don't really want to use, or you don't want to be notified for all the stations. And so if you do want to be notified for everything, you'll have to go in and click on all for each individual station. So the next thing I want to talk about is the Facebook users groups. And so with the users groups, I know there are at least 3 different user groups. There's the hydrogen car owners, there's a Honda Clarity owners group, and then there's the Toyota Mirai owners group. So these are groups on Facebook where typically customers go on to share their experience. I know a couple of weeks ago we had the National Hydrogen Day, and a couple of meetups were set up by customers. These pages are not they're not monitored and they're not owned by the Fuel Cell Partnership. These again are created by customers themselves, and they're great for sharing information. From time to time, I will hop onto those sites and I'll answer questions or share information as well. We also have station developers who will share information about station statuses, but the primary source for figuring out if a station is online or offline, again, is the station operational status system, or SOSS. And again, that's m.cafcp.org. But again, I encourage you to check out those sites if you are a customer. All right, and so with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Joe.
Yeah, so what we're looking at now is the this year's priority station location recommendations from the automakers of the Fuel Cell Partnership. In August of this year, we published on our website this list of priority market recommendations from the automakers as they say it. This was a double-blind exercise and then aggregated by the partnership. So this information was presented also in early August to the station developers and government stakeholders. And what this does is help inform the ARB and CEC in their planning processes for the next station solicitation round. So these recommendations are essentially station coverage recommendations in terms of market coverage across the state. And these recommendations including build outs in the San Diego market, LA market, Sacramento markets. Also looks to build out in destination locations such as Palm Springs and wine country, both in Napa and in Southern California. And it also identifies recommendations and needs for connector stations in the I-5 Central Valley corridor, as well as on the PCH and 101 coast. Next slide, please, Ben. And I mentioned that as we're building out the station network in California, and as the same thing will be experienced in the Northeast and other areas as well as they build out these station networks, is that you have there's a balance between coverage and capacity. Coverage is really referencing the network of stations to serve key markets, and that really follows in the cluster destination and connector station concepts from the 2012 roadmap that the partnership published. In looking at coverage and getting the right stations in the right markets, this helps improve customer experience and confidence so that they can fill up where they travel, whether it's at home or running errands or going to work or going to destination locations. It also helps increase vehicle utility at these stations, and it enables broad market participation across the state and throughout markets. And keep in mind that the first 100 stations that we're looking to build in California are primarily focused on market coverage. When you're talking about capacity, it's really that's talking about hydrogen supply, and that can be at a single station, a network of stations, say in the LA area or in the Bay Area, or capacity refers to the amount of hydrogen that's produced to serve the market. So as I mentioned, the challenge that we've got as we're building out the station network is balancing coverage and capacity needs as the market grows, and it's going to be a dynamic system. So there's going to be some fluctuation as more stations are built out in more areas across the state. Ultimately, the end goal is to market coverage and capacity decisions will ultimately be private sector decisions made by station operators and developers. And the partnership members are in their Vision 2030 document that is being developed now will help map out this transition from the push of the government to the pull of the market in developing stations. Next slide, please. So also in August, the Air Resources Board published their AB8 report that they're required to publish every year. And what we're seeing here, one of the key findings that was identified in the report was that as planned fuel cell vehicle deployments, and comparing those with funded station network development, we may see a slight shortage in capacity around the 2023 timeframe, and given these fuel cell vehicle projections. The partnership members are looking at ways to help address this issue, and you can go to the next slide. Next slide, please, Ben. We're looking at ways to address this issue, and in terms of regulatory incentives, some of our members are discussing and considering at this point different policy options that might help with this capacity situation and accelerate the faster development of stations and increasing capacity. Some of these ideas that are floating around are modifying the low carbon fuel standard program or the cap and trade program to help incentivize the private sector and accelerate station development. Also, in terms of helping to lower costs, we're looking at medium and heavy duty fuel cell vehicles on the road. We've got approximately 2 to 4 heavy-duty vehicles in operational demonstrations right now in the state. And also, with regard to costs and expanding the use and utilization of hydrogen, we're looking at ways for grid integration and storing and distributing renewable energy, electrical energy. Next slide, please. As you might have seen when Ben was showing some of the station examples on our website, we are now tracking, and we have a little some information on the renewable content for each hydrogen station. Hydrogen itself is on a renewable pathway like electricity is. California does require 33% of the hydrogen fuel sold as a transportation fuel needs to be renewable. And that can include the actual feedstock itself, or that can be met through credits. There is a renewable hydrogen roadmap in development by Energy Independence Now. And also the Energy Commission is currently considering a demonstration project for renewable hydrogen as a transportation fuel. Next slide, please. Moving to the Northeast, there are 12 stations that are hydrogen fueling stations that are in development in the Northeast. Those are being developed by Air Liquide in partnership with Toyota. Currently, there are 4 hydrogen stations that are close to coming online. Those include Hempstead, New York, Hartford, Mansfield, Massachusetts, and Providence, Rhode Island. The Massachusetts location and the Connecticut and Rhode Island locations, retail stations, are projected to open before the end of the year, and right now the Hempstead, Long Island location is projected to be open in early 2018. So next slide, please. In closing, as we mentioned, we've got now 33 retail hydrogen stations open and operating in California. All these stations use a minimum of 33% renewable hydrogen. We've got over 2,700 light-duty fuel cell vehicles on California roadways. Again, in the Northeast, we've got 4 retail hydrogen stations coming online soon, with 8 that are in various stages of planning and permitting. We do have 20 fuel cell buses in operation in California. We have some trucks operating in operational demonstrations in and around the Port of Los Angeles. And I didn't mention this earlier, I meant to, but the CVRP, the Clean Vehicle Rebate Program, has been reauthorized. So that provides a $5,000 rebate for light-duty fuel cell vehicles. And the partnership members are, as I mentioned briefly, are developing a Vision 2030 document to help accelerate market expansion of stations, and also to accommodate the expected deployment of fuel cell vehicles throughout the state, and also moving beyond 500 retail stations across the state. And with that, I think we can take questions.
All right, thanks, Joe. Our first question is about SOSS, and so I will. I just wanted to also note that if you have any recommendations or any suggestions on improvement for SOSS, always feel free to shoot me an email or message me on Facebook or give me a call. We're always open to looking at ways we can improve SOSS. But the first question is about improving the station map so that we can view it on a mobile device. And at the moment, the station map isn't designed for mobile use, which is why we typically send users to our SOSS website. But we do have plans to upgrade that station map so it is more mobile friendly. On our SOSS site, there is a link to the homepage of the Fuel Cell Partnership website. The general website is mobile friendly, but the station map, again, is currently not fully responsive, and so we're working on improving that, and we'll get that. Again, if you have any other additional feedback on SOSS and ways it can be improved, definitely feel free to contact me. So, Joe, our first question is specific about the Sacramento stations. Do we have a projected timeline on when those stations will be online?
Those stations, I believe, are shale stations, and I think there are 3 of them, if I recall correctly. Those are part of the latest round of funding, and the best projection I can state at this point is probably towards the end of 2018, early 2019, when they'll come online.
Okay.
We'll know more as they actually start construction. If they get further in the development process, we can give you better dates than that.
Okay. Next question, Joe, is there a cost differential between stations using gaseous versus liquid hydrogen?
There may be due to different technologies. The gaseous, there are different, in the network right now, there are different markets. There are different distribution costs associated with getting fuel to those stations. So there may be a slight differential in that cost, but it also may be the distance transported and where the distribution hub is located. So a lot of factors go into the cost of that.
Okay. Next question is about renewable content. What percentage of the renewable fuel being produced is being produced on-site versus transported?
There are a handful of electrolyzer stations. The Riverside station is an electrolyzer station. The Ontario one that's coming online, and probably there are a couple others as well. So those are the renewable stations that are in the network right now.
Next question is about SOSS. Are there any plans to show prices at the pump on your station status dashboard? So at the moment, we are working with the station developers to start collecting price. We're not. There's still discussion about how that's going to be displayed and how we get that information from the stations. And so there's discussions definitely taking place. I don't have an exact timeline for that yet. And so definitely by the next webinar, I hope to be able to share more information on that. Next question is about forecasting. So Joe, in August, you forecasted that 37 retail stations would be open by end of this year. Now you're predicting that 33 will be open. Which 4 stations won't be open by then, and why not?
The list I showed actually earlier in the presentation showed the next stations that were expected to come online. So some of those timelines for those stations got pushed back for various and sundry reasons. If you want to go to that slide, we can show what they are. Oh, there it is. So the Mountain View Station, LAX, Thousand Oaks, and Palo Alto. I think the original projections were that they might be ready to come online at the end of this year. So they are getting pushed out a little bit into early 2018. So those are the stations that would formulate that discrepancy.
Great, thanks, Joe. A couple of not questions but comments. Thanks, Keith Malone, our social media legislative guru from Southern California. He wanted me to point out that there is a Hyundai users group as well on Facebook, and so if you're a Hyundai driver, definitely check that out as well. So I'm just scrolling through our questions here. All right, Joe, is there any publicly available data on whether installation cost of hydrogen stations is decreasing with experience?
The public information that is available is on the NREL site. I don't know the URL off the top of my head, but NREL tracks operational data for any Energy Commission funded station in California. So you can go to that website. We can, in our notes that we send out to everybody, we can give you the URL for that. So they do track a lot of operational and maintenance and throughput information for each of these stations. So we can direct you to that website.
And I'll also add on to that, I believe the AB8 report has a lot of that information as well. And in December, that'll provide even more clarity on that as well. And so definitely, if you're interested, take a look at that report as well. Okay. So UC Irvine Station last month was testing a new kind of dispenser nozzle. It was very convenient and easy to use. What is the status of deploying this new nozzle?
UC Irvine is my home station, and I didn't get to use that last month. So I don't know. We'll have to get back to you on that. I know that there was a new nozzle or an updated nozzle that was being tested out to address some issues that were seen with the other nozzles. We'll do some research on that and provide that in our written comments.
Will the Vision 2030 cover hydrogen station expansion into U.S. states beyond California and into the Northeast?
The Vision 2030 document is essentially focused on the California market.
Okay. Thanks, Joe. Sorry, I'm just scrolling through. There's a lot of specific questions about stations. So if they're very specific, we will respond to these questions, but it's going to be posted on our blog. Again, similar to the questions of what's the status of the Sacramento stations being open, what's the status of the Orange County station. These questions will be we'll address in the blog itself. Joe, amongst the busiest stations, what is the number of hydrogen vehicles served per day? Do you know this?
I don't know that off the top of my head. I do know that I think the Long Beach station, I think, might be the highest utilized station in the network. That information can also be found, I think, on the NREL website as well. If I threw out a figure, I'd be wrong, so I don't want to throw out a figure.
Definitely. Again, we'll review that information and post it onto our blog.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Joe, can you clarify the 30% renewable statement on current stations? Besides the two electrolysis stations mentioned with Riverside and Ontario, where does the renewable component come from?
So it would come from perhaps the feedstock that the hydrogen producer might have produced their hydrogen from renewable natural gas or some other renewable feedstock. So that would factor into the renewable, that would help meet the 33% renewable aspect of the law here in California. So, and as I also mentioned too, that can be met through credits as well. So it's a combination of both, and it would vary from station to station depending on where they're getting their hydrogen from, the source of their hydrogen.
So there's a question about the status of upgrading the non-retail stations to retail, such as the Burbank station. Joe, did you want to touch on that, or you want to respond to that in the blog?
No, I can touch on that. Nel Hydrogen has, I think they were awarded the contract to upgrade the Burbank station. I think Shell is considering upgrading the Newport Beach station to full retail. And Emeryville is slated to be upgraded as well to full retail. And I know that there are discussions about the process of getting Cal State LA to full retail. But those are the ones that are off the top of my head come to mind.
So the question is, does CaFCP feed the AFDC website for hydrogen station numbers in California? And so the answer is yes. We're also working with AFDC to include the station operational status as well. And so that's something that's in the works. But we work jointly with the GoBiz office as well as others to make sure that the data is accurate here in California, and then we do feed that into AFTC. Sorry, Joe. I'm just walking through the questions. We're really trying. Again, there's a lot of comments that I believe came in after we already answered some of these questions, and so I just want to sift through real quick. So not a question, but a comment. So the US DOE has an app that you can download on your phone, and it lists all the station locations and information. And so definitely check that out if you haven't downloaded that yet. So Joe, will CFCP be working with Nicola Trucks to develop hydrogen stations in California?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Will the Fuel Cell Partnership be working with Nicola Trucks to develop hydrogen stations in California? I'm assuming
Yeah,
this is...
I know we've been tracking that company's press releases. If they once they make an announcement to reach out to the California market, we will definitely work with them to the extent we can to help be successful in California.
Joe, has any discussions with Oregon or Nevada been had for stations in those destinations?
Yeah, we've had conversations with government officials, some industry representatives, and also some university representatives as well about the California experience, what it takes to build the hydrogen station network out. And so we have had conversations with both representatives from Oregon and Washington State. So we have those periodically. I don't know the latest as to what the status is of any efforts in those two states right now.
And so this kind of is groups a lot of the questions together. But is there any plans to bring more stations to San Joaquin Valley, mainly along Highway 99?
Eventually, yes. As I mentioned about in my coverage capacity discussion, we're the first stations are about getting coverage and allowing people to travel where they need to. And right now we're building out the I-5 corridor, but we have I personally have talked to a lot of station owners on the 99 corridor, and so have a lot of the station developers. So there is interest in the 99 corridor, so we will get there eventually.
All right, Joe. The slide showing the number of vehicles on the road looks short of expectation. I'm still finding 9 out of 10 people don't know about the existence of fuel cell vehicles. Is there a campaign with both state and corporate funding in the works?
To promote fuel cell vehicles?
Yes.
Well, I know, was it in California? I don't know. I mean, that's what the partnership does. That's part of our outreach efforts are geared towards that. There's a lot of advertising, I know, by the individual companies online and in print. So I think there are marketing campaigns, communication campaigns that are active right now. We're just starting the market, and the concern you hear from the automakers is you don't want to get too far ahead of the stations. So and that there is a correlation to the number of stations being developed, how many stations are in the network, and how comfortable the automakers feel releasing new vehicles to the market. So that's probably one of the main reasons why you're seeing the number of vehicles on the road that are not where projections were, say, last year.
Okay. All right, Joe, you mentioned Toyota partnerships in launching of new stations. Does a list of corporate partners exist for companies seeking to open a new station?
For each new station that opens up, that I don't know unless there's a press release. The partnership can provide people with, if they request it, we can provide them a list of station developers that are, and other companies that are involved in developing stations in California. You just have to send a request to us via email.
And I'm just scrolling to the top to see if there's any questions missed. Again, there are quite a few questions that were very specific about certain stations, and we'll touch on those, as well as there are some questions that we want to confirm before we answer, and so we'll definitely look into those and post on our blog after this presentation here. All right. All right, and so the last question is information on blog access and location. So our blogs are located under our resources link here. So it's going to be this blog link here. Once you go to this blog, you can see previous webinars that we've hosted, as well as a number of other blogs, of course. And
Ben, can you bring up that slide or switch it over to your screen?
So it's going to be under the resources menu item. First link is blogs. And on this page here, we'll have an archive of our previous blogs, our previous webinars, the recordings, all the questions. And so once this is completed, we'll work on getting those posted up next week. And so with that, I think that was the end of the questions list. Again, there were a couple that we skipped, and we'll touch on those in the blog itself. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Again, if you have any suggestions for additional webinars or any questions after this, feel free to contact Joe and I. Thank you again for joining us. Any last comments, questions, Joe?
No, I'm all set. Thank you, everybody, for participating.
All right, thank you, everyone.